Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody out there. My name is Tom Ericsson. I'm a client solution advisor with CCG, and I'm going to be doing an overview of IBM Cloud for you. Before I begin, though, a little background on me. I've, like I said, been with CCG about 5 months. Prior to that, I was with IBM for approximately 5 years, working in their analytics brand as a technical resource in their sales organization. And that meant I could go around to customers and, do technical roadmaps, overviews of products and so forth of their analytics brand products, which is Cognos, SPSS, Watson Analytics, TM1 or Planning Analytics, what they're calling it today, as well as some of their cloud offerings, such as Watson Data Platform. Prior to that, I was actually a customer for, I want to say 11 or 12 years working with various analytics products. I touched pretty much any role you could touch in an analytics product, from being just an analyst to a administrator, systems admin, data modeler, and so forth. So, I have a fairly extensive background in those, and, happy to share my insights with you throughout this presentation. But let's jump in. I'm going to talk about the overall agenda. We're going to talk about why cloud. Why is it such a compelling thing in terms of organizations? Just 3 years ago, every time I talk to somebody about cloud, they're like, no, we're definitely not going to do that. And now I'm talking to customers and they're saying, geez, I'm behind the 8 ball here. I don't know why I didn't jump on this earlier. I see a lot of benefits. So we're talking about why cloud. I'm going to talk about IBM Cloud overview for you. I'm going to give you a Cognos analytics on cloud. A little bit about that, and then we're going to do a demonstration around some baseball information with regards to the World Series that I was able to pull together and put out into the IBM Cloud, as well as Cognos Analytics on cloud. So let's talk about why organizations struggle to deliver value. Really, the first component in terms of why organizations struggle to deliver value is data. It's very difficult to get at. A lot of the times in organizations, it resides in silos, both in terms of systems as well as departments within an organization that aren't really necessarily communicating with one another. There's also components to data that nowadays organizations didn't even think to store. You're talking about social information out there. Maybe some weather data that is pertinent to your organization. Those things were never really thought of in terms of, hey, let's store some of this information historically, or let's get access to it, because it was really never that readily available. Well, now data volumes and data access is just so much easier to get at things like that, as well as unstructured data, right? I mean, if you had doctor's notes or if, for example, if you're a retailer and you've got, customer reviews coming in on your website, capturing some of that unstructured data is sometimes not the easiest way, and folks' organizations maybe didn't plan on that. As well as being difficult to access, right? Not knowing where it is one thing, getting access to it is a whole nother ballgame. But even if you had access to all of this information, and what organizations have done is they've created, 10, 15 years ago it was data warehouses, and now we're talking data lakes, where we're just dumping all this information, getting people access to it, and letting them go at it however they want to, with whatever solution that they want to go at it with. That isn't necessarily a sound analytics strategy for an organization, because what you end up with is a lot of misinformation out there. If the data isn't governed, so organizations can go in and say, I've got all my data here, just go at it. And what you end up finding is analyst A will create a calculation one way, and analyst B will create it another way. Maybe they'll join two different tables together in different ways, and they end up arguing about who has the correct information. That leads to distrust in your data warehouse, your data lake. And at the end of the day, what happens is your overall strategy for providing those analytics will fail, because people don't trust it, don't understand it. So you need to have a sound governance strategy around that information, not just to the point where that the final endpoint of your data is, but where it came from and how it was processed to get to that point. Skill sets. There are a lot of new technologies in the marketplace today. And the brightest minds tend to want to use those new skills and technologies rather than being pigeonholed into one particular set of platforms or skills that your organization has been using, since the inception of the processes within that. For example, an IT department uses just Java rather than using any solution or programming language that's out there to provide best of breed capabilities. So what organizations tend to do in terms of skill sets is they pigeonhole themselves in terms of a specific platform that they use, and they only look to hire those particular individuals. So really what they end up doing is narrowing the applicant pool in terms of what they can pull into an organization. So being able to nurture new skills and new technologies within the marketplace will attract a much broader set of skill sets to your organization, as well as driving the overall capabilities of your analysts and so forth. And then finally, infrastructure, right? Gone are the days where you can order your infrastructure, wait a couple of weeks for it to show up in your loading dock, unload it, and then plug it into your server farm with your network, your security technical specialists, then install the software. That process can take weeks to months, and then maybe you realize that you didn't have enough horsepower to begin with, and you have to do the process all over again. Well, in today's world, you need to be able to fail fast. So being able to get at the infrastructure quickly and easily through cloud capability is something that is very, very appealing to organizations. So today's world where we're coming from, right? We have all these Gartner Magic Quadrants and all these Forrester Wave reports that are telling us this provider is doing best in this particular quadrant, and this wave is the best for this particular product. And organizations struggle with, how do I cobble all of this together? Do I just pick the best in each of the categories and then integrate them myself? Well, good luck trying to get 4 or 5 different vendors trying to make their solutions all work together in a nice, seamless manner. So what we're trying to get to today is more of a insight platforms as a service, right? Where organizations such as IBM and Google provide you with the overall platform, and it's already built and cobbled together for you to make sure that it works, not just with the actual IBM or Google products, but with open source capabilities as well, so that you can nurture those skill sets within your organization quickly and easily. So let's talk about IBM Cloud a little bit. Really, there's 4 main tiers, right? You've got your application, your solutions and services, right? We're talking about those insight platforms as a service component that we just saw. We're talking about data science, Internet of Things, virtual agent, logistics. These solutions have been provided out of box and can just be plugged in with your organization. Or you could go the overall route where you just need individual components to build out some of the things that you're missing within your organization, such as your cloud infrastructure, right? Being able to deploy networking, compute, security, all those kinds of things, as well as some of the data prep and data cognitive capabilities, right? Being able to ingest that information, store it, provide analytics on top of it, all wrapped around with governance and so forth. And then finally, we've got that cognitive AI that makes IBM Cloud something different, right? That you see these ads on television when you're watching the Masters or you're watching the U.S. Open or any sporting event, or just television in general during prime time hours. We talk about these Watson supercomputer, right? Well, at the end of the day, that's just a set of cognitive APIs that you can use from that Watson supercomputer to plug into your apps, right? Would you like to understand in terms of when you're speaking, in terms of the setting of a virtual agent, understand the tone of the individual? Is he angry? Is he upset? Is he complacent with what he wants? Is he going to churn? Or personality insights, right? That kind of API can plug into message boards, right? Where you can analyze the personality traits of an individual that's communicating through typing content out, right? And understanding what drives their overall belief structure and so forth. You get an insight into that particular customer so you can target them specifically. Conversation, speech, those kinds of things. Let's talk about analytics in the cloud a little bit, right? So what's Cognos Analytics in the cloud? Well, at the end of the day, if you've used Cognos on-prem, Cognos Analytics in the cloud is really the same exact thing, except for you're no longer managing the infrastructure. You're no longer having to do the upgrades. You're no longer having to do the backups and so forth within the overall solution. That's all handled by IBM product experts and cloud experts to make sure that your solution is, one, up to date, two, running efficiently as it can, and three, making sure that your user base has access. Now it comes in 3 different sizes: small, medium, and large. Starts about 25 users and scale up to tens of thousands. There's also more of a PVU model if you just want a bare metal server where you can install, or IBM installs the software for you, and then it can expand out to hundreds of thousands of users if you need it to. So really, at the end of the day, IBM Cognos and Cloud gives you the best of both worlds. It allows you to access your data on-prem through a VPN tunnel, which is encrypted at rest and in motion. So your data never is open to the overall cloud environment. Or you can access your data on cloud as well if you've got data on cloud. So you can do both, right? On-prem and data on cloud. You can combine that information into a cohesive unit. So you've got maybe some social information on a cloud connection, and you've got your operational data on-prem. You can combine all that as well. The same holds true with your Cognos on-prem. You can access through VPN on cloud, and obviously you can always access your internal data as well. Here are just some of the security certificates that we have available, both for Cognos Analytics on cloud as well as the overall IBM Cloud. There are hundreds more. I just can't list them all out here. But that's one of the questions I always seem to get is well, what about security on cloud? Well, at the end of the day, a lot of these breaches that we have that we've read about isn't a breach of a specific cloud provider or data in cloud. It's a breach where the data was hacked internally, right? So somebody get access to your internal network and was able to get into your data that way. So a lot of the times when we talk about security on cloud, your data is more secure there than it would be on-prem, because nobody's got access to these data centers and they can't just walk into them. So how does IBM Cloud help to deliver value, right? We talked about those 4 main buckets of information earlier where we were struggling with, to deliver value to your organization. But one, data. It breaks down those data bearers, those data cells, and puts data at the fingertips of the individuals and the teams that need them wherever it resides. The second component is governance, right? It provides you the ability to provide to wrap all of your data policies that your organization has into the processes that create your data warehouse, that move your data from one place to another, that create your data lake, so that when you go back and say, all right, well, where does this information originally come from? You've got a clear lineage of where that data with nice transparency, so everybody trusts and everybody gets the same answer in terms of the analytics they're providing on top of that. The skill sets, right? So IBM isn't just IBM Cloud products. We incorporate third-party solutions and providers into our cloud infrastructure to allow individuals to use the most up-to-date and most pertinent skill set for a particular process or tasks within an organization, rather than just being IBM. And when I show you the demonstration, I'll show you some of those third-party components in the IBM Cloud catalog. And then infrastructure, we said we needed to be able to fail fast. Well, being able to spin up a server on cloud takes minutes versus weeks. And you can go and try out the specific project that you were tasked with. You can maybe start off small if you were just worried about backup and storage. You can start the infrastructure that way and just use it for your backup and storage. And it only really, at the end of the day, charges you for what you use. So there's a significant cost savings there as well when talking about being able to use cloud capability. So when we talk about innovation to disruption, right? Innovation is doing the same things better. Well, cloud definitely lets you do the same things better. But as you become more comfortable with the overall cloud capability out there, you're starting to do new things, and you're starting to do maybe some things that are making those old things that you were doing obsolete, and that leads to market disruption. So cloud gives you that highway, you know, from innovation to disruption. So let me jump in and give you a demo of what IBM Cloud is. What I'm going to do is set the stage for you in terms of what I did. So I am an analyst, and I was tasked with providing some analytics around historical baseball data for my organization, as well as some information around the World Series that just recently happened here between the I'm blanking now, between the Astros and the Dodgers. There we go. So let me jump into the demonstration. I'll give you an overview of the components I use to pull that data together in cloud to create a repeatable process, to store that data in cloud, to connect Cognos Analytics in cloud to that data, and then create a dashboard around the analytics. All right, so when I log into IBM Cloud, like I said, there are many different capabilities. In fact, IBM just announced, I think it was on Halloween, a significant change of rebranding themselves on cloud. So they went from IBM Bluemix to IBM Cloud, which makes a lot of sense, because when you said Bluemix to a lot of people, they didn't necessarily understand what it is that you meant. So IBM Cloud makes a lot of sense. They also announced an IBM Cloud Lite account. So you're seeing these, these little tags underneath the individual services within IBM Cloud. When it says Lite, they are available to you in the Cloud Lite, and that just means that you've got access to these indefinitely at no charge, right? What they're ending up doing is you hit a certain threshold of data or volume, and that's where you start getting hit with charges. But the prior versions of Bluemix, you had maybe 30 days to try something out. Here you've got an indefinite amount of time to try out the objects and so forth. Along the left-hand side, you've got a way to navigate through the overall services that are available to you. There are some boilerplates available to you. Remember, we were talking about that third-party capability, right? So we've got communities here that are providing content to the IBM Cloud. It's not just IBM, as well as Cloud Foundry apps and so forth have community capabilities as well. We've got the different Watson APIs down here, and most of them are available to you in terms of the Cloud Lite components. So you can go in and try them out for yourselves to play around with them if you want to. But let's talk about the data and analytics solutions, because that's really what I wanted to use to start working on this particular project that I was tasked with. And what I wanted to do, was take the data that I was provided with and create a repeatable process. And really what I ended up doing is creating up spinning up a data connect service, which is a self-service data preparation integration for analytics projects service. So when you select this process, what it's going to do, it's going to give you an overview of what it is, where you want to deploy it, the overall credentials. You can give it a specific name. The service, you can give it a specific name. You can have multiple landing spots within your organization, right, that spin up services. In terms of my case, it was an advanced analytics service within Convergence Consulting Group that I spun it up in. But it could be finance, operations, marketing, and what have you. Then it gives you pricing plans around how you want to deploy it, right? And then you just select create. And within a matter of minutes, what you'll end up having is an overall service. Now, the service credentials are available there, the plan, you can always change that. You're never locked into it. And you can have multiple connections, right? You can connect your cloud services to other cloud services so they can communicate. And I'll show you how I connected Data Connect to TB2 on cloud. But when I select launch here, it's going to open up this particular window here where it launches me into the actual portal itself. And in here, I can create activities. And an activity is really just an ETL process around specific files. But the first thing I wanted to do was load these files that I had with regards to my World Series data into Data Connect, and I loaded the 2017 World Series statistics, player information going back to like 1986, as well as salaries and teams. And from there, what I did is I created an activity around those particular data files. And I'll show you, in terms of what you're able to do in the activities here, right? You can quickly and easily convert dates, create specific calculations. But beyond that, Data Connect is fairly intelligent in terms of saying, hey, you know what? Your data is missing content. You can do these kinds of things. It'll actually give you suggestions in terms of what you can do with your information. It also understands what an identifier is, what a numeric value is, a text value. It understands geographic information, those kinds of things. And it'll allow you to apply standardization to those kinds of fields, that are accepted by analytics solutions. So you can see along the bottom here that I've got my individual files that I uploaded. If I look at the overall history here, I can see the history of the things that were performed on this data. So I've got a nice historical view in terms of what was done to the information, so everybody understands it. And what I can do once I've done that is close this out here, and I'll show you the overall process that was created in terms of the details here. Once again, I've got my changes that were done to the data. I've got a process with a scheduled activity, which pumps the data and the changes out to my DB2 on Cloud instance. Now, the way I did that was I created a connection to my DB2 on Cloud instance. And what I can see here is you can easily go ahead and grab those connection credentials from my DB2 on Cloud instance, which is this particular here. I can see the service credentials, and I can just copy them from here into my Data Connect, and then they start talking to one another. So then once I actually go in and run the process, it pumps that data out to my DB2 on Cloud instance. And like I said, I can scale it, but let me open this up to show you the console for this as well. And I'll show you the data inside of the DB2 on Cloud. So I can explore the information here, and it'll show me the various schemas that I've got available to me. I've got the Spaceball schema here, and here are my 4 tables that I pumped out to DB2 on Cloud. So once it's there, what do I do, right? So I can connect my Cognos Analytics on Cloud solution to this DB2 on Cloud. So if I come into Cognos, and this is the dashboard I created, and I'll get to that, but let me jump into the actual admin portal here. What I did is I just created a connection to DB2 on Cloud in the admin portal for Cognos. And keep in mind that everything here is zero footprint, right? So I didn't have to install anything in terms of the overall product. Everything is available to me on Cloud. So it's nice because I can get started on my own quickly and easily without having to install infrastructure, without having to deploy infrastructure, without having to install software on that infrastructure. I can just start going. So let's just run through how the overall project worked, right? So once I've got my data, I have to create a module that tells my analytics solution, in this particular case, Cognos, how to retrieve that information from the database. And the first thing to do is obviously connect Cognos Analytics to the database. I just showed you that connection. The second component is to create that communication on how the actual tables relate to one another. Maybe add some metadata components on top of that. And the way you do that is by creating what we call a data module. And I can do that based on existing data modules, data servers, which are just connections to databases. I can do it on uploaded files. I can create data sets which are stored within the Cognos Analytics solution, that are disconnected entirely from your database, so that you can reduce network traffic if you want to. as well as packages, which is a historical way that metadata was published out to Cognos. But in this particular case, let's talk about that DB2 on cloud connection that I've got available to me. It's going to give me my baseball schema here. And when I select done, it's going to show me the individual tables that I've got available to me in terms of the, once I drag them over, actually, it'll show me the tables there. So put them into my data module, and there are my tables. Now, they aren't connected in any way, shape, or form yet, but if I want to connect these, so for example, if I want to connect salaries to my World Series players, I can go ahead and control click these and connect them. And just create the relationship by right clicking. And what I want to do is actually create a connection based on the player IDs. I'm going to match those up. And when I hit refresh, I'll get connection there, as well as the teams, because you know, that connection, team salary information, and the various players. I can connect those as well. Let's connect players, and I'm going to do that same thing on player ID. And there we go. And you can do that with obviously the teams as well. I want to connect those, and I'm going to base that on the team ID, and like that, as well as the year. And there we go. One of the other nice things I can do here is I can create a way to navigate through the information as well, right? So for example, if I'm looking at my players table, and as you can see that Cognos Analytics obviously recognized geospatial information, time-based information by the actual icons next to these individual components, so textual, geospatial, numeric, and so forth. But I can create a way that I can move through this information by what we call navigation paths. So if I'm looking at the players table here and I say, all right, I want to move from country to state, to city, and then maybe the last name of the player that was born in that particular city, where they came from, I can add that. And these can be completely custom to your organization, right? That makes sense to how your users move through the information. It doesn't have to be something that makes sense like this, right? It could be based on a specific line of business and how they look at the information themselves. So very customizable and easily done in terms of how I would want to move the data. And the way to save this is just, or the way to deploy it is just to save it as a data module. What I can do is just put that in my baseball data module component here, and this is just the demo item that I just built for you. And when I save it, it'll just deploy that. Yeah, I want to overwrite that. So there we go. Now, let's go back to the dashboard and show you how that would work. So if I select the little pencil icon here and show my data elements, I can see here that, you know, I've got my navigation path in terms of the country, state, city, and game name given, as well as how you can maybe browse through the individual leagues, right? So it gives the user a nice view of how you can move this information if they don't have an idea of how to move through it. And then I've got individual components here. So if we look at here, in terms of historical information going back to 1986, we can see that, didn't want to do that. You know, the average player salary, now we saw, you know, really start separating itself from organizations that won the World Series starting back in 93, and we can really see a spike here when we look at 2009. So if we select that data point and want to see what team it was that actually won the World Series that year, you can see it was the New York Yankees, and they had a $201 million team payroll, with the average player making a little over almost $8 million. What's nice about these dashboards is that they are fully interactive, meaning that anywhere you select within the dashboard, it'll actually control all the other mechanisms within the dashboard, as well as giving you access to all the different data elements that are in your dashboard. And these are also filterable, right? So if I don't necessarily see something on the dashboard that I want to filter on, I can go to the data itself and select a specific filter for that data element. That's always available to me, or I can just drag it onto the canvas myself. But let's take a look at the World Series team batting here and see how our individual batters performed, as well as the overall batting leaders for the Astros and the Dodgers, right? So George Springer was the actual MVP of the overall World Series. And if you drill into his name, it'll actually control just the data elements for the Astros, right? So once again, everything being connected, as well as being able to individually control individual widgets on the screens themselves, so I can compare various players and how they performed in terms of number of runs, hits, doubles, home runs, strikeouts, and so forth. I also created the same component for the pitching leaders within the World Series. And in this particular case, the bubble chart, where we see the large bubble, that connotates a very large ERA. So in terms of baseball, that's not necessarily something that you want to have. So let's take a look at maybe Justin Verlander and get an understanding of how he performed in the World Series. You can see that the stats update maybe versus Brandon Moreau, and see how that individual performed in the World Series. But Yu Darvish obviously had a terrible outing. I think that was in Game 7, where he was just shelled by the Astros batters. The other nice thing about this is if I wanted to understand where the individuals came from, right, where the players from both teams and so forth, where they came from, I can create new content around that as well. So I can just add individual data points from the players themselves. So if I want to understand the birth country of the individual players within the World Series, I can drag that on. Now, in this particular case, I haven't linked that. I haven't grabbed my player names from my World Series, so it's going to give me players historically from 1986 and where they all came from. So you can see the shading start to appear on the map itself. But if I go ahead and grab the names of the individuals and drag that onto my canvas as well here, I'm going to see, that there were some that came from Japan, the U.S., Cuba, Venezuela, and so forth. But I also want to take a look at maybe the salaries of those individuals and see where they came from, or how much they were paid in terms of the overall salaries. You can see that the larger the actual bubble that you see, the larger the salaries that were paid. I can add the states in here to give you a better kind of look at maybe breaking down the structure of this a little bit further, even to see where in the U.S. And as you can see, this is so nice and easy to use because I didn't have to understand that I had to create a map or grab a map object and then drop specific elements into the map objects to make state and country appear. I could just drop it onto the canvas, and Cognos Analytics is then smart enough to understand, okay, well, this is the countries, oh, you're putting state in, well, let me break that down by state for you. And then I can add individual components as far as salary is concerned to give you an understanding of gets paid the most and so forth. And once again, Cognos Analytics understood that. So quickly and easily able to go in and create further analytics on my data points. This is also customizable in terms of properties. So if I want to take a look at the different style maps that are available to me, I can just change that to maybe be a dark background to match the overall dashboard feel here. But that is an overview of how I created the content, a repeatable process, so that, you know, if I went on vacation, somebody wouldn't have to rely on all the ETL that I performed in an Excel spreadsheet that was on my desktop. All they'd have to do is rerun that process, or I could schedule it to run every time that data was updated. The historical information is there to kind of get back at what ETL was performed. I didn't have to rely on anybody else to deploy software for me, to deploy infrastructure for me. I was able to get in and start spinning up all these services myself, you know, and go in and start creating. There were no more road barriers in terms of months of waiting before I could start doing these kinds of analysis. So that being said, are there any questions? Well, thank you very much for your time. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. We're always happy to engage with you. Thank you.